Economy analysis in security analysis. So here we introduce security analysis, where we actually say what is fundamental security analysis, and we'll take you through economy analysis, then later in another session, industry analysis and company analysis. So in this session, we discuss economy analysis. Equity share, in particular, the intrinsic value of an equity share depends upon the growth rate of the company, earnings of a company, as well as the risk exposure of a company, which also has a lasting effect on the share price. But we should not forget the fact that the growth rate, earnings, and risk exposure of a company depend upon the economic environment that the company functions in, the industry where the company is part of, as well as on the performance of the company itself. Hence, this session concentrates primarily on the fundamental security analysis, which we see to it that it is comprising of economy analysis, industry analysis, and company analysis. There is one thing which we have to say: economy analysis discusses economy-wide factors such as inflation rate, growth rate of an economy, foreign exchange rate, etc. Industry analysis, on the other hand, we study factors such as supply-demand gap, substitute products, government policy changes, etc. In company analysis, we study company-specific factors such as labor management relations, products, brand images, the age of the plant, as well as quality management. So we'll discuss more on economy analysis as part of fundamental security analysis in this session. So first, now it is economy analysis. We will try to see what is economy analysis. So economy analysis can be stated with no doubt that a company performs well. So it can be stated with no doubt that the company performs well when the economy is booming, when the income rises, demand for products and services increases, and is when the industry and the company normally tend to prosper. For investors investing in a particular company, they are mostly bothered about some of the economy indicators which affect the performance of a company. So a study on these economic indicators would give the investors an idea about payments of interest and dividends, as well as an idea about future corporate earnings for a company. Hence, such a study on economic indicators is a must and will be complementing a broader study that completes a study on fundamental security analysis. So that is in a gist what is economy analysis. Now, next about economic study. What are the different cycles of prosperity in an economy, which are depression, recovery, boom, and recession? We will go through each of them briefly. Now, next is what is growth rate of a national income? What do you actually mean by growth rate of a national income? We will also see what that is. So first we'll see what are the different cycles of prosperity or different cycles of prosperity in an economy. So the economy in general passes through different cycles of prosperity called economic or business cycles, which are depression, recovery, boom, and recession. So what are each of them, or what are these stages which we actually say? What is depression? Depression is the worst stage. So in this stage of economic cycle, the demand for products and services are very low and would be declining. Interest rates and inflation would be seemingly high. Companies will be forced to lay off workers, shut down plants, and reduce production, which in turn will worsen manufacturing and production in the depression cycle. So that is about depression. It is not a good sign in the economy. It is one stage in the economy. It's a worst stage. However, the next stage of recovery, that is when the economy recovers, that is called the recovery stage, there will be signs of economic revival that the different business or industrial segments show. Demand is shown to slowly pick up, which in turn will lead to investments in the different walks of the economy. What is seen to rise in this stage are profits, employment, production, which will get the economy moving towards the boom phase of the economy. So that's the next stage, what is called as boom phase of the economy. So during the boom phase, a high demand will be shown where the investments and production are maintained at the highest level, catering to a huge demand for products and services. Companies may soar on profits, and after prolonged periods of time, the economy would fall into recession, which is the next stage. The recession stage is when the economy is slow and there will be downturn in employment, production and demand. The profit of the companies is shown to decline, which will force the economic stage of depression if no appropriate steps are taken by the government. So here we see the growth rate of national income. So what is next? What is growth rate of national income? But before that, we are now clear on the different cycles of prosperity or different cycles in economy, which is depression, recovery, boom and recession. Next, we'll see what is growth rate of national income. Very briefly. So what is growth rate of national income? It is characterized by three main indicators of the national income of a country, namely GNP or gross national product, NNP or net national product, and GDP, which is gross domestic product. So these are different measures of the total income or total economic output of a country generally. The government of a country makes this data available periodically from time to time. So now next is, what should the investor care for in an economic analysis? So these are the factors which an investor should care for, which are inflation, interest rate, government revenue and exchange rates. So we'll see what each of them are. We'll see what is inflation. So here we see that higher the inflation rate, more upset will remain the company's business plans. So inflation is a condition, is a major factor which impacts performance of a company. Higher the inflation rate, the more upset will remain the company's business plan, which lead them to reduction in their profit margins as well as leads them to further cost escalations. What exactly happens in inflation? Companies' purchasing power is affected because there is a lot of uncertainty in the market because of inflation in the economy. Demand for companies' products will be reduced. Inflation is measured using the Consumer Price Index and Wholesale Price Index. So what is Consumer Price Index? Consumer Price Index measures the changes in consumer prices of a representative set of baskets of consumer goods and services over time. Primarily, it is calculated either in terms of difference of CPI or Consumer Price Index from previous year, or is calculated based on monthly changes in prices paid by the consumers. It also is an indication of a market standing of where the price index is. That is exactly what is Consumer Price Index. Now, what is Wholesale Price Index? So Wholesale Price Index is a measure of overall changes in price over time. Only catch is that prices are referred to prices before the goods or services reach the customers. So since the Consumer Price Index and Wholesale Price Index are available on a monthly or weekly basis, an investor should examine this and evaluate the inflation rate prevailing in the economy or in the future as part of fundamental analysis. So that is what is inflation rate. Next is interest rate. So that is also that is also something which an investor should take interest in before investing in a company, or as part of company analysis he should investigate interest rate also. So what is interest rate? In an economy, the interest rate determines the availability of credit to companies in an economy. So when the interest rate is lower, availability of cheap credit exists. Interest rate high, production cost increases and lower profitability results. So when the interest rate is low, as I was telling, there will be availability or accessibility of cheap credit and lower cost of finance, assuring the company higher returns and profits. On the other hand, when interest rates are lower, higher production cost results, and as a consequence of this, the profitability of a firm will be lower. Hence, it is very important that the investor examine and evaluate the interest rate prevailing in an economy. Next is government revenue. What all things exist in government revenue which an investor should take interest in? Trends in government revenue, deficit and expenditure have a lasting impact on economic analysis. Now, whenever the government spending exists, it stimulates the economy, creating more jobs in the economy, and demand is generated, thereby fortunes of many private and public sector enterprises will go high. So when more government spending, the more vibrant remains the economy. There is more activity in the economy, and the market will also be extremely active and vibrant. Now, when government spending is more than the revenue it generates, budget deficit happens, which is a fact. Now, this is common in many developing countries, and as government spends large amount of money in building up the infrastructure, there is a budget deficit. There is a gap between how much revenue the government gets as well as how much is the government spending. So that gap will be there. If it is a negative gap, if the revenue is less than what the government is actually investing or spending actually rather, then the budget deficit will be there. Now, hence, an investor should examine and evaluate government spending, as any situation like budget deficit may in turn spiral inflation in the economy because of deficit financing as a direct result of inflation. Okay, so that is about government revenue. Next is exchange rates. What the investor should be interested in this exchange rates, what exactly they are. Exchange rate of rupee affects companies and industries who are major exporters and importers in a country's economy. Few factors are important from this perspective, and the most important of all is the exchange rate of the rupee. The other factors being balance of trade deficit, balance of payment deficit, and foreign exchange reserves of the country. So what affects companies and industries that are major exporters and importers in a country's economy is the exchange rate. Factors important in this context are exchange rate of rupee, balance of trade deficit, balance of payment deficit, and foreign exchange reserve. So we will quickly see what is balance of trade deficit and what is balance of payment deficit. Excess of imports over exports is balance of trade deficit. And net difference payable in terms of trade, capital transactions and services is payment deficit. So excess of imports over exports. What comes into the country is imports, what goes out is export. So the excess of imports over exports is balance of trade deficit, and net difference payable in terms of trade, capital transactions and services is payment deficit. Here also, if deficit increases, the rupee may get devalued. Now, what happens when there is a deficit? So when there is a deficit, the rupee may get devalued. So when the rupee is devalued, the countries and companies' products stand competitive in foreign markets, and as a result, the export functions of the economy improves if the rupee is devalued. But if that same country is dependent on foreign products and goods, which has to be brought in as part of import, the import of which would be extremely expensive, and there may emerge deficits. Since the deficits are to be met by foreign reserve of a country, the country's foreign exchange reserve may reduce, causing a weakening purchase parity for this country in question. So this completes a session on economy analysis under security analysis. Thanks.